Would you consider yourself in the upper, lower, or middle class growing up?
Uh, I really didn't know.
Okay.
I didn't know damn thing about class.
Yeah.
All I know was we were poor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know my dad worked for the railroad.
Okay.
He didn't make a hell of a lot of money, but he had a job. And all he had made enough money. That's when the WPA came along, called Work Progress Administration, and you work 10 hours a day at 10 cents an hour. And they put in they built all the armories that you see around the country. They also put in all the water systems. In those days you had outhouses, where you just dig a hole and set this building over it. You know what outhouse was.
Yeah.
Well, then you had outhouses. Then they put in all the sewer systems and the water system. And that was to make work. And you work, some people work 7 days a week. And then when the WPA came along, they had to cut it back to 5 days a week. No, my mother was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
And she had 5 kids, so she couldn't work anyway.
Okay.
And I was the last one of the 5.
If you could describe a typical dinner meal, what would it consist of?
Black-eyed peas, fatback, cornbread, sometimes iced tea, but mostly chicken, because everybody raised chicken. You had a backyard with a coop, and everybody had chicken. So every Sunday you always ate nothing but chicken. That's why I ate chicken today. Like the guy said, I was 15 before I found out a chicken had anything but feet. Because all we ever got was the gizzard and the feet. And the pop ate the other part of the chicken. But you had to go to church on Sunday. That was mandatory. And all businesses were closed down on Sunday. They had never heard of opening up on Sunday. Nothing to do with work. That was God's day.
Yeah.
And it was hammered into you.
What was family life like then? Between your parents and like all the children and stuff?
Close knit.
They were really
Very
close.
close knit. In fact, you may have 4 or 5 kids in one bedroom. 3 or 4 kids in the same bed. And
Was there a lot of fighting happening?
family-wise?
Yeah.
Of course. Of course, they always have. That's sibling rivalry has always been around.
Yeah.
Because I know I didn't like my brother one bit. Okay?
Radio shows. When you think of that, what comes to mind?
We had radio, and we had radio programs like the Lone Ranger, we had Little Orphan Annie, and we had Amos and Andy, and we had Burns and Allen, Gracie Burns, George Burns, and you had Bob Hope, and you had Phyllis Diller wasn't along then, was she? She came later. Phyllis Diller, you heard of her? Ed Sullivan was the big thing. He had a TV show, which he's the one that brought the Beatles to America.
Oh.
Was Ed Sullivan, and they were on his. It was a talent show, and it was on television on Sunday. Now, when TV first came along, they were very expensive, and you couldn't afford them. The only way you could see one is go to a bar.
Black and white.
Well, black and white color hadn't even been thought of. In fact, the telephone in those days was hand crank. And you turn the crank, and then you could talk, but you didn't dare go near that thing during a thunderstorm. because it would knock you on your butt because of power from lightning. And then you had operators. I mean, if you wanted to call a number, you picked up the phone, and then the operator would connect you to the next person you wanted to talk to. And they had thousands of operators, telephone operators.
Yeah. Clothing and hairstyle. What was that like then?
Clothing. Well, that's the day when I grew up, it was called knickers. And that's what the British still wear today, some of them. And, you know, it's a pant that went to your knee and then it had a band on the bottom of it. And those were called knickers. And overalls. You know what overalls, you guys call them jeans, but they were called overalls. And jeans were never heard of. It was called bib overalls, made by Oshkosh. And you had a jacket to match the overalls, and that's what you wore for clothing.
And what about hair? Was there a certain style that was in?
Short hair. Nobody had long hair. I mean, if you had long hair, you were a freak.
Yeah.
Something was wrong with it.
So now looking today at kids and their styles and hairstyles, what do you think?
Unheard of in those days.
Okay.
And you'd say, God, you gotta go get cleaned up. Now, we're in the 40s now.
Yeah.
Okay,
What
ahead.
about women during the 40s? What was their common outfit and hairstyle?
Dresses went all the way to the ankles.
Okay.
And if you had one up above your thigh or your calf, you were a loser. Huh? Yeah, that's right. And then they wore bonnets, and women always wore gloves when they got dressed up. They all wore gloves, and you always had to wear a hat when you went to church. You couldn't sit in church with a bad head.
Slang words? Did you have any?
Slang words? I can't remember slang.
Or just like, some people call like telephones different names, like cell phone, handy, like there's so many names for it. Is there some things where today it's not called what you used to call it?
Yeah. Bedspreads were called counterpanes. And you had blankets and you had pillows. But the thing that covered the bed was called a counterpane. And kids, when it rained, wore galoshes. They don't call them that anymore. That's something that came and went. And you say if your kids get your galoshes on, they don't know what you're talking about. And where you hang your clothes was called a cloakroom. It wasn't called a coat room because people wore cloaks in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's before they came out with overcoats and suits. And then the shoes, men wore shoes with spats. You ever see Mickey Mouse?
Yeah.
That's what he has on his feet. Now those are called spats.
Okay.
And they went over the top of your shoe.
And that was to keep them dry? Or?
No, that's the style.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you were dressed to the hilt when you had spats. And suspenders, that's most of people wore suspenders. And then they came along with belts. But they were mostly suspenders.
What were some of your daily chores at home?
Chopping wood for the stove. And we had wells for water. So you had to draw all this water out of these wells for washing. And then when you washed, you put the clothes in a big cast iron container. You build a fire around it, and you boil them. And then when they got boiled and clean, and you made your own soap. So you couldn't afford to buy soap. So all soap was made. Plus you raised not only chickens, you raised pork. And then everybody had a pig. And some of the rich had cows. So you could get milk. but we never eat anything with pork, because everybody had pork. And you killed the pig in the fall, and that's what you ate all winter for the next spring. And then you start all over again. That would be called, in this day and age, an agrarian society. You grew what you grew and you ate what you grew, and then you kept the cycle going.